Now, from CBS 4 News, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Good morning, I'm Jim DeFede, and welcome to Facing South Florida. The race for governor in Florida is being closely watched around the country. 5 Democrats are vying to be their party's nominee, and on the Republican side is a two-person race between Congressman Ron DeSantis and Florida Agriculture Commissioner Adam Putnam. Today, we welcome Commissioner Putnam. This is his first Facing South Florida appearance. Adam Putnam has been the state's Agriculture Commissioner for the past 8 years. Before that, he spent 10 years in Congress representing the area around Clearwater. He also spent 4 years in the State House. His family is involved in ranching and citrus farming. He is married and has 4 kids. Commissioner, thank you very much for coming in.
Good to be with you. Thank you so much.
So, how's the campaign going?
It's going great. One correction: I'm not from around Clearwater. I'm from the middle of the state. I'm from the big city of Bartow.
Bartow, okay, but I know the district.
But it's an easy mistake to be made. And when I served in Congress, I did represent eastern Hillsborough and part of Osceola and most of Polk County. But the campaign's going great. We kicked it off a year ago in my hometown in front of 2,000 people and on the steps of the old courthouse. They weren't even all related. And since then, we've been spending a lot of time in South Florida, as well as throughout the state in small towns and in big cities alike, because as you know, the diversity of Florida is our strength. But to be governor of Florida, you need to know that diversity, you need to know the differences, you need to know the regions and how we bring people together to solve our problems.
Now, you entered the race, the folks thought that you were the front runner, but it seems as if right now you seem to be behind, because I noticed a recent fundraising email that you sent out said we're right now losing in the polls. Why do you believe you're losing?
Well, certainly we've seen everything tighten up, just as they always do in Florida. When you look at the national emphasis on this race, the millions of dollars that are pouring into Florida from outside of Florida, it certainly impacts the state. And I believe that ultimately Floridians want a governor who knows Florida best and is going to put Florida first. And that is the core of my campaign. Workforce development, public safety, bringing Floridians together to build a stronger, better state.
Okay, we're going to get to all of that. We got a lot of time here, but I want to ask you the impact that Donald Trump's endorsement of Ron DeSantis appears to have. I know the president is coming to Florida at the end of the month. He's going to be campaigning with Ron DeSantis, and there's a feeling as if that somehow you were not as fully supportive of the president during his campaign. I know some of the things that you had said, for instance, when he commented about the Gold Star families, you called those comments abhorrent and dishonorable, and you said it makes me question how badly he wants to win. He keeps running his mouth about the most ridiculous things. You also called the Access Hollywood tape vile and obscene. Are those comments challenging then candidate Trump coming back to hurt you?
Well, I support what President Trump is doing as our president. I support his agenda. But I'm focused on a Florida first campaign. And if you want to be governor of Florida, you need to understand Florida. You don't get to call Washington every day to get your instructions. You need to stand on your own 2 feet instead of just dragging along behind the coattails of our president, who has plenty on his plate to make America great again.
Is that what you believe that Ron DeSantis is doing, is riding the president's coattails?
That's all he has. He has no plan. He has no agenda. He has no vision for the future of Florida. He doesn't know the difference between Hialeah and Homestead. I am focused on every community in our state.
Do you think Ron DeSantis is easier to beat?
There's no question in my mind that the reason why the liberal media and the Democrats are piling on and trying to influence the Republican primary is because they know who they believe the easier candidate to beat is, and they believe that Ron's easier to beat.
So you don't think, so you don't believe that any of your comments in the past with regard to Donald Trump have any impact on the way Republican voters see you right now?
Republican voters know that I support President Trump's agenda. Republican voters know, and I made this clear in the Fox News debate, which was nationally televised and was essentially it could have just as easily been a debate for the United States Senate for the lack of Florida questions in it. I support what he's doing to make sure that we have fair trade agreements. I support the fact that Floridians are paying less in taxes because of the Trump tax cuts. I support the fact that he's making it easier for businesses to be successful in this country and that he's fighting for America all over the world. But the governor of Florida needs to understand the issues that the Florida governor faces, and they're not always glamorous, and they're not always what gets you on the evening news.
So let's talk about some of the Florida issues. We're taping this on Tuesday, just so people understand the time frame in which we're doing this.
Sure.
Earlier today, you appeared at the Christian Family Coalition. I was reading your Florida Families First agenda, and there was a line in there that about the need to protect life that struck me, and I just wanted to ask you about it because I'm sure your stance is you consider yourself pro-life, strongly pro-life, and this was something that was in your agenda. Quote, sadly, Florida ranks among the worst states when it comes to the number of abortions performed, a failing of our state's moral character. Do women who exercise the right to have an abortion lack moral character?
That's not what I said at all. But what I did say is that as governor, I will fight to protect and defend life. I am a pro-life candidate for governor. There should be no surprises. You should know what you're getting in a candidate. That's what campaigns are all about. You should know what you're getting. There should be no surprises.
So what does that mean, the state's moral character?
It means that we should do more to make sure that we are placing children in loving homes. It means that we should do more to reduce the waiting list for foster care children. There are tens of thousands of children in Florida who are in the state's custody. That number is going up because of the opioid crisis. It is a moral imperative that we fight the opioid crisis and that we reduce the number of opioid orphans and that we increase the number of adoptions that take place in our state. I believe that is a pro-family agenda for Florida.
You also have said that you would sign the heartbeat bill, which would essentially would say that if when a woman appears or goes in to try to have an abortion, if the doctor detects a heartbeat, he or she would not be allowed to perform the abortion at that point. Am I stating it correctly?
There have been other states who have adopted legislation similar to this, and it's playing out in the courts.
So, as I understand it from the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, an ultrasound can detect a heartbeat as early as 6 weeks. Some women may not even know they're pregnant within the first 6 weeks. Are you comfortable banning abortions as early as 6 weeks of pregnancy?
I'm very comfortable protecting and defending life in our state.
One of the things that you would get to do as governor is appoint Supreme Court justices if they come retire. But there's a little bit of a controversy as a regard to that. Right now, the court is a 4-3, more of a liberal bent than a conservative bent. But 3 of the more liberal justices are set to retire. I believe the exact date is
the first day,
right? Basically,
either
January
the last day
8th.
of Rick Scott's office or the first day of mine.
And that's my question to you. Rick Scott says that he has the right to appoint those judges. Do you agree with him, or do you believe that the incoming governor should appoint those judges?
Well, the court refused to hear it, which tells me that they believe that it is Rick Scott's decision.
Well, I think what the court said was that they didn't think the controversy, it wasn't ripe yet, because it was a hypothetical. It hadn't really come to pass. But do you want Rick Scott to appoint, or do you want the incoming governor?
Well, I believe that they belong to Governor Scott. But regardless of what is ultimately decided about whether they belong to the outgoing governor or the incoming governor, I am going to appoint judges at every level, whether it's the state Supreme Court or the local level, who call balls and strikes. If they want to make law, run for the legislature. Their job is to interpret. And I think that we need to have judges who understand the proper role of the judiciary and bring some humility to the bench. I think it drives everybody crazy, whether you're a lawyer or not, to have judges who get robitis.
I want to turn robitis for everybody. I want to turn to guns and start this section, then we'll take a break and come back for more. But I want to begin with saying, would you have signed the bill that Governor Scott signed that raised the legal age to possess a gun from 18 to 21, also created certain red flag laws? Would you have signed that bill as governor?
The bulk of what was in that legislation I do support, and I applaud the governor for how swiftly they were able to get it done. But there were portions of it that I disagree with, and I've said that.
So would you have vetoed the bill?
One of those elements is the fact that they raised the age limit. So I think there's a fundamental problem with saying to a 19 or a 20-year-old, you're old enough to fight and die in Afghanistan and Iraq, but you're not old enough to go down to your local gun shop in Florida and purchase a shotgun to go to a dove shoot out in one of our wildlife management areas. So, I have a problem with that.
So the bill comes to your desk, though, as written. You veto it, or do you sign it?
Well, you know how the world works. I mean, look, it doesn't just appear on your desk out of thin air. You work with the legislature to develop bill that you can sign. And I would have worked with the legislature to find a bill that we can sign, with an emphasis being on mental health. The common denominator of these school and workplace shootings that are not terrorism inspired, but the ones that are non-terror inspired, the common denominator is mental health and mental instability. And the real key is keeping guns out of the hands of the mentally ill, whether they're 18, 21, or 51.
A couple of quick questions. Do you favor open carry in the state of Florida?
Well, I think that certainly if you look at where many of the targets have been, they tend to be in what they call soft targets, places where it is known by the shooter, whether it's the nightclub or the school, that there is a high likelihood that no one is going to be able to defend themselves. And so I support working with the legislature to make sure that law-abiding, eligible citizens can exercise their Second Amendment rights and protect themselves, their families, and their home in the most responsible way.
So is that yes to open carry?
Well, I think that there is a way to get there in a responsible way that prevents people who are mentally unstable from being able to open carry. And certainly the debate in the legislature over the years has been about, you know, whether you inadvertently expose, you know, when your coat comes open and it shows that you are concealed carrying. I support our strong concealed carries policies in Florida.
Just have a little bit before we take a commercial break. I want to show the NRA tweet, the sellout tweet that you posted. Yeah. This tweet. Can you just clear one thing up for me? Did you write this tweet, or did your staff write that tweet?
It was designed by staff, but it certainly.
But you stand by it.
But it certainly reflects the fact that I am a strong Second Amendment supporter, and it's important for the media and everyone else to understand that the millions of Americans who hunt and shoot and collect firearms, and the nearly 2 million Floridians who have a concealed weapons permit are lawfully, responsibly, and safely exercising their Second Amendment rights. Crime in Florida is at a 47-year low.
Up next, more with Commissioner Adam Putnam.